Hi, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to Junction Reads. This is our final online event of the season, and I am thrilled to welcome Lydia Kwa with her latest novel, A Dream Wants Waking, from Woolsack and Wynne. Welcome, Lydia, to Junction Reads. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very honored to be here.
Well, a real pleasure. I'm going to share an acknowledgement of land, which is very important to us. Junction Reads exists in Tekaronto, which for thousands of years has been the traditional land of the Wyandot, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Anishinaabeg, including the Chippewas, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit. Lydia joins us from Vancouver on the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. This land is still home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, and we are very grateful to have the opportunity to work in the community on their territory.
Thank you for the
Yeah,
acknowledgements.
welcome, welcome. My favorite part of Junction Reads, as everyone knows, is finding out what the authors who are joining us are reading. And I would love for you to share with everyone what you're currently reading.
I just started in on a collection of short stories by Deepa Rajagopalan. It's called Peacocks of Instagram. And I just finished the first short story this morning, and it's fantastic. It's just come out with the House of Nancy Press. So I've been getting into short stories recently. Before that, I was reading Carly Baker's Last Woman and also Sashi Butt's Death by a Thousand Cuts. Both also fantastic. It's so great to read these writers.
Yeah, I just finished Carly's collection. She's one of my absolute favorite writers and stuff. She's also on my TBR. I love short stories. It's my absolute favorite genre,
Mm,
my
yeah,
go-to. So
yeah, me too.
thanks for sharing those.
You're welcome.
You're going to share readings from three different parts of the novel, which is so thrilling to me. I love when authors do that. But before you do that, would you mind if I shared your biography with everybody?
I don't mind. Go ahead. Please
Great.
do.
Born in Singapore, Lydia Kwa moved to Toronto in 1980. She studied clinical psychology at the University of Toronto and Queen's University before moving to Calgary, then to Vancouver, where she has lived and worked since 1992. She is the author of 2 books of poetry, The Colors of Heroines and Sinuous, and 5 novels. This Place Called Absence, The Walking Boy, Pulse, Oracle Bone, and A Dream Wants Waking, which was published by Woolsack and Wynne under their Buckrider Books imprint. Kwa won the Earl Burney Poetry Prize in 2018, and her novels have been nominated for several awards, including the Lambda Literary Award for Fiction. A visual artist, too, her artwork has been exhibited at Center A and Massey Art Gallery, and she has self-published 2 poetry visual art chapbooks. Her collection of poetry from time to new is forthcoming from Gordon Hill Press in 2024, fall 2024.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm excited to hear you read.
So, shall I go ahead and
Yes,
yeah.
please.
So, because this is a novel that spans different spaces and time periods, I thought I'd give you a little bit of a context. Uh, it, this this is the beginning. I'm going to read from the beginning of the novel first, which features 2 fox spirits, a mother and a daughter fox spirit. And one of the fox spirits uh, was reincarnated as Chilan in a previous life, where Chilan is the protagonist, one of the main protagonists in the book, in the novel Oracle Bone. In this current novel, A Dream Wants Waking, the fox spirit is reincarnated as Yinhe, which means Silver River, and Silver River actually refers to the Milky Way. So the first excerpt gives us a sense of the mother and daughter fox spirit watching a group of humans being exiled from Chang'an in 904 CE. And they are exiled because there is a general who has destroyed Chang'an. Unfortunately, this scene could be very reminiscent of what's happening in different parts of the world today, especially Palestine. So I didn't write this scene with Palestine in mind, but this is a historical thing that actually occurred. And so the mother and daughter fox spirit are looking on. So this, much of the novel is actually set in 2219 CE, Luoyang, and Luoyang is actually the eastern capital in China. But in this novel, it is a totally made up Luoyang with all kinds of non-human characters, which I will introduce you to later on. I'll just start with the little excerpt from the first scene. The daughter and mother are fox spirits are looking on from a ledge above the road and looking at the humans traveling from Chang'an to Luoyang in 904 CE. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, great. The daughter fox spirit gazes in the direction of the western capital instead. Chang'an is no more. All that grandeur, all the liveliness of its inhabitants, the temples and monasteries, the libraries. Of course, sweetness, you can't help but feel sad. The daughter cares about Chang'an, while the mother fox spirit, on the other hand, is averse to cities. She can't survive for long in places with large aggregates of humans. Unlike her daughter, she recalls her former life this year, 250 years earlier, how she managed to survive and thrive living in the countryside. She bares her fangs, uncomfortable with the memory. Sometimes I don't know what to do with my sadness, the daughter says. The mother replies, we keep returning, even though we've achieved immortality. Nobody tells us to reincarnate. It's not inevitable. There are other fox spirits who just want to do mischief and have some fun. But to love means we must be willing to suffer. Yes, Mama, you're right. We return because we have a wish to complete something we couldn't do in the previous life. Love compels us to do more. A few travelers pause to see what the carver is doing. The fox spirits notice that the mood in the procession seems to have changed. A few begin to sing, then more join in. The music rises up against the dark and cold, competing with the wind. Listen, Mama, it's that ancient ode. The reeds flourish, lush, white dew still falling. My beloved so dear, wanders lost along the shoreline. Upriver I search for him, the journey long and tortuous. The reeds luxuriant green, white dew turns to frost. My beloved so dear, drifts beyond the waters. Upriver I search for her, the journey long and arduous. I've always loved this song. Don't you, Mama? The mother fox spirit nods. Yes, I certainly do, my dear. The song reminds us of our connection to humans, especially the nurturers. Both fox spirits warmly recall that this melody has been sung by women while they labor in the fields, on the rivers, or in their homes. Through the ages, peasant women pray to the white fox goddess in order to conceive. The women also leave food out for birds, foxes, and rodents, and sometimes tend to injured animals. The daughter fox spirit lowers her head slightly and narrows her eyes until they're mere slits. An ache spreads through her and she growls. I can't forget how I failed one human in particular. I must find a way to right that wrong. Her mother responds, you're thinking of your last incarnation in Chang'an as Qilan, the Taoist nun, aren't you? I can't shake that image out of my mind. Young Ling at the auction in the town of Huazhou. The first time I saw her, I had such a strong feeling of, I don't know what to call it. The mother fox spirit returns to their conversation, a glint in her eyes. To love is to suffer, but to love is also to discover. You're saying that you'd be willing to reincarnate a few lifetimes, however long that it takes, until you find her. Yes, Mama, that's what I'm going to do. She falls into familiar moroseness. Is she being foolish? She exhales a stream of purple mist as she shakes her head vigorously. I must believe that love will triumph against all odds. only the purest kind of love, which possesses a beauty invisible to many. So that gives you an introduction mostly to the fox spirit, the daughter fox spirit that would reincarnate in the present day of his novel, 2219, Luoyang, as Yinhe. The next excerpt I'm going to read is very different, and it features two characters, one of which is called Number One. Now, Number One is a huge, gigantic, chimeric brain that's been cloned from human brain tissue and whale brain tissue. And it is kept alive and operating in a large vessel of fluid in a lab run by Dr. Wen Fang. And the scientists take care of Number One because Number One is functioning as a supercomputer that is operating to monitor and regulate all the different functions in different zones of the city. So there is Bright Order where the skilled workers are, where the science lab is, and there is Bent Back where Yinhe lives with her father. There is Interstitium, which is the entertainment zone where Yinhe's mother has left years ago, left her father and her to become part of a spiritual assembly, and she's now the leader. And then there's also Blue Otode, which is a workers zone. So, and then there's also a dream zone where a lot of the chimeric creatures work and labor under the leader and decoder. So here I'm reading from a little excerpt from Number One's state of consciousness, because Number One, although a brain as a result of cloning ends up achieving not only sentience, but clairsentience. Number One has been noticing the rise of irritability and anger in their neural experiences. What does this mean? How do they explain to Dr. Wen that in addition to reading her thoughts, they can also see her with their mind? She is a movement, a pulse, a physical presence whose entire being they sense. Along with an acute awareness of her, they feel an increasing anguish at being confined in this fluid. They have longings to touch, to smell, to feel the breeze, and to see the sun. All the memories that they've acquired from data have become a source of torment for them. Their memories aren't really theirs, are they? One requires a body in order to move away from or towards situations and other beings, to experience the air of ever-evolving flux around them, all that they've read about, all that has been inputted into their brain tissue, including the smell of the ocean, the immersive memory of moving through water, have resulted in this state of pained longing. They want to be a body person. They are already a person. Since the term person refers to a being with consciousness, with dignity and awareness of their own life and environment, they search for the various definitions of shenti in Chinese. The common translation is simply body. And yet a local ethnographic scholar of the 21st century wrote about shenti as a combination of body with personhood. Number One feels a frisson through their whole being as they contemplate this. A monster, a beast, a gigantic chimeric creature. They wish to feel kinship with other chimeric creatures, to be acknowledged and welcomed by them as one of their own. Number One believes without hesitation that chimeric creatures are persons as well. They feel lonely. Dr. Wen is the only person whom they can talk to. They wish they could communicate with Endecoder and Dream Zone, just because they are curious to learn what he's really like. They have seen images of him caught on drone surveillance cameras. They have watched him exit the walls of the city and have deliberately blocked the information in order to keep him safe. He's a curious one, Number One thinks. Whatever he does, I want him to be shielded from harm. So that's Number One for you. Very interesting character. Quite fond of them myself. So the last excerpt I'm going to read, just take a drink of water, or barley water really. This is somewhat of a comedic scene, okay? Because you see, there is a demon in this novel, and his name Gui. And Gui is really the Mandarin pronunciation of the word for demon. That's it. Couldn't come up with a better name, and might as well just call him Gui. And Gui in this novel has decided to possess Phoebe, who was Yinhe's mother, and Phoebe has defected to this spiritual assembly. And Phoebe lives and runs Supreme Spirit Assembly in Interstitium. And she has a house or cottage that she lives at the back. And this evening, this excerpt is an evening where she can't sleep very well. And she has a dialogue with Gui, who lives inside her. So I'm gonna try to show you a little bit of the twisted relationship between Phoebe and Gui. She tosses about. A flush of heat overtakes her. Menopause is such a gong show. She can't wait to be released from the confines of this female body. Spirit tells her that it will purify her to such an extent that she will take a form free of these physical limitations. She prays, yes, please, get me out of this menopausal hell. Sweat pours out of her. She gets up to drink some water before returning to bed. After a bit more tossing about, she gets up again to fix herself a drink. She pulls out the two-tone ceramic bottle of baijiu from the bar cabinet, removes the red cork and pours herself a glass, then sits back down in the armchair, this time without bothering to switch the lamp on. The baijiu has just the right mix of sweetness balanced with the scent and taste of glutinous rice. She had hoped she would never end up meeting Yinhe or Stanley again. She just doesn't like to be reminded that thing came out of her body. As a child, Yinhe had been wild and never appreciated Phoebe's attempts to tame her. What a stubborn piece of shit. Her own parents would have beaten the crap out of her if she as much as looked at them funny. Phoebe had sensed in the early days there was something amiss about Yinhe. Now that she has learned from Gui that Yinhe is a fox spirit, she feels validated in having left Stanley and Yinhe. Humans ought not to coexist with those kinds of beings. She sighs and takes another sip of the baijiu and asks Gui, why did you want to reveal yourself to her last night? Are you questioning my actions? Oh, no, I'm just curious. Phoebe feels a burning sensation in her gut and moans. She sometimes forgets Spirit doesn't like her to ask questions. I like asserting my power. That's enough reason. Yes, Spirit, of course, power must assert itself. Remember, children are here for our use. They are dispensable. Phoebe nods. Power needs sacrifice. Nothing is as invigorating as the high of receiving a sacrifice. And I tell you, don't be a snob about language, huh? What do you mean? Phoebe asked aloud. You don't like it when I use slang and colloquial speech. You don't appreciate code switching meh. I just don't understand why you would need to use it, Spirit. You being so powerful, why descend to such common, ordinary levels? This is why you are ordinary human and I am Spirit. I learned last time I came into this world, got to meet humans at whatever level they're at. Make them feel as if I'm one of them. You understand or not? Phoebe sighs. She will never understand Gui's ways, but she will have to accept them. Slightly campy.
I love it. I'm so excited when you sent the email to say that you were going to read that excerpt. I was excited. It's really hard to not love Phoebe and Gui, even though they're both the most disgusting characters in the book, especially Gui for reasons that you empathize with at one point.
Yeah. Well, this is a little segment where they disagree very vehemently about their choice of cocktails. Mm-hmm. So
Yeah, and I love this the scene that follows where Gui's like jumping all over the place, and it was fantastic and beautifully wrought for the physical elements. I want to open my first question with talking about love. In the first excerpt that you read, um, only the purest kind of love, which possesses a beauty invisible to many, I thought was so beautiful. And there's also a very moving scene between Qilan and Ling at the start of part two of the novel. Ling, who's the love of the unknown wayfarer, our future reincarnation of Qilan, interestingly says, if life is so complex, how do we know what to do? I mean, what do we choose? What is destiny? I want to talk to you about that because outside of love and gender identity and all of the other themes explored, it sort of feels like destiny is a really important question that characters in the novel and the novel itself wants to answer, like what is destiny and what paths do we choose and how do they affect destiny?
Okay, yes, sure.
So that's it. I want to talk to you about how this novel explores that the difference between choice and destiny and what your thoughts were on that if there is in fact a choice.
Well, I think there's always choices, and some different characters throughout this novel and Oracle Bone and the Walking Boy explore choices. Uh, and it's not so much that I'm trying to say that there is one particular way of viewing choices versus destiny. I guess I'm exploring that perhaps destiny has to do with the choices.
Right.
Right? The path is what we choose. There is a character, an intersex character in The Walking Boy, Bao Shi, and when asked by the female emperor how he chooses his decisions in life, because he's such a pure spirited person, he says, I'm following what draws me. So I just want to leave it open enough to say that it's a feeling of being drawn to do certain things that
Yeah.
result in the choices we make, and I think that would be the path.
Yeah.
But
That and that's definitely what Yinhe does in
yeah,
the novel, that she just sort of allows time to pass and trusts that at some point in time, destiny is going to bring her to the person she loves.
well, it's also that she's waiting, and not in a passive way,
Hmm.
not like destiny is an outward thing, but that she will pay attention to new things,
Hmm.
and when some timing of situations arise, she will trust the intuition to follow that.
Right.
And so that's why in the novel she gains that opening opportunity when she's summoned by Endecoder uh, to Dream Zone. And so she basically just follows the path and senses that perhaps this is the lifetime that she's going to do something to finally reunite with Ling.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the two books that precede A Dream Wants Waking, you mentioned Oracle Bone, is set in the 600s CE and focuses on Qilan and Ling and Hairlip, and The Walking Boy, set years later in the early 700s with Hairlip, and as you mentioned, Baoshi. I was fascinated by the decision because those two books stay in the past, and your decision to bring A Dream Wants Waking so far into the future. Um, how did you know that you needed to do that? How did you know um, that Yinhe's destiny, I guess, couldn't be discovered a couple of hundred years later, and
Mm.
you
I
needed to,
don't I don't really know I don't really know how I know things. Yeah, I
right?
don't really know why I write what I write. Not fully. When ideas come to me, I'm always intrigued, and that keeps me going in terms of writing because I'm always discovering things that I don't completely know yet.
Hmm.
So it's a mystery to me, but I wanted to write a novel that was speculative fiction and with a mix of science fiction in it. I wanted a future setting. So
Right.
that came from the conscious side of me that decided to write a novel set in the future. So then I thought, can I do this? And using some of the characters and the storylines from the two novels prior. Although this could be seen as the third book in the trilogy, it can be read as a standalone novel.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
haven't actually read Oracle Bone or The Walking
Walking
Boy, and
Boy.
it completely exists.
Right. So I like to give myself a challenge and write something difficult. So this was difficult. And also, I base quite a lot of the ideas of chimeric creatures on a book that I read in translation, the classic of Mountains and Seas. And this is a book, I think, of indeterminate age. People say different people wrote it, and it was compiled across a long stretch of time.
Mm-hmm.
And in this book, it's more like poetry. There are different descriptions of all kinds of strange animals with different body parts,
Mm-hmm.
and they are chimeric creatures. So I kind of put that together with some articles I've been reading about research on cloning and research on tissue regeneration and tissue transplants. So, and then I was also interested in a novel, several novels like Philip Dick's Do Androids Dream of Sheep or something.
Oh yeah,
I can't remember the full title, but the Philip Dick novel that inspired
Android's Dream of yeah. No, I'm
Electric Sheep.
like no, but the movie.
The movie. I'm suddenly blanking out the movie.
Blade Runner?
Blade Runner. There we go.
Thank you. Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2046. Thank you. So so I was kind of fascinated by that. And so some of the mood in interstitium or some of the sense of surveillance draws on those ideas in the novel and in the movies.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's kind of like superimposing and weaving different themes from different sources into a novel that is kind of quite textured.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that Phoebe just shared her exasperation with menopause, and the two of us sat here trying to remember the name of a movie.
Yeah, of course I know Blade Runner, but I had a moment of,
Yeah, I 100% blame menopause for that. I like brain just completely
brain fog, that short circuit. That
oh.
happens to me more and more.
Yeah,
so it was
exactly.
fun writing that scene, menopausal hell.
I love it.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
was good.
fun. I have fun writing some of those scenes, and some of the scenes are surprising to me.
Yeah.
We mustn't. I don't want to discuss the ending of the novel. I just want to say I don't want it to be there to be a spoiler, but I just want to say I was actually surprised by the ending because I did not know what the ending would be, and it surprised me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
wow.
It was like came out of the blue. But
yeah.
a lot of the writing is like that for me. And then, of course, there is conscious process to put things together afterward and in between those surprising moments. But yeah.
Yeah. I want to talk about character development because I sort of feel anytime I read a book that has such incredibly diverse characters and so many characters existing in different times and spaces, I wanted to ask a writerly question about how you kept track of them and how you knew who was going to come forth from Oracle Bone and The Walking Boy and really just like writing. How did you keep track of them all?
I made a quip when I was working on The Walking Boy. I said, there are so many characters in this novel, and they come to live with me for 5 years and they never do any housework.
Right.
Okay. How do I keep track of these characters?
Yeah.
I don't know. My brain's kind of weird that way. I have the space to switch. And when I first, so I actually wrote The Walking Boy first before Oracle Bone, although chronologically Oracle Bone is set before The Walking Boy. So when I started working on The Walking Boy, it kind of blew me where I was doing this novel, and there were all these characters. So I actually went to a paint store and I got all these paint sample, the paint chips.
Yeah.
And I wrote in pencil all the different scenes. So I color coded the characters.
Oh wow.
And according to like a kind of a color tone or emotional mood of the character. And then I would then stick those paint chips and alternate them on a cardboard. And then I looked at it and I threw it away. I looked at it
and just hoped that it's there.
And then it was there. And then later on, it's kind of like, you know, shuffling the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always a sense of who is this being? Who is this character?
Yeah.
And continually asking the question as a way of exploring and developing the character throughout the work. I start off knowing a little bit and I get to know more and more as they show up, as they develop, and they tell me what they're about and what's interesting to them. So it's really more like listening, paying attention to a character, and trying to imagine what their challenge is, what they're about. Why did I choose those characters to reappear or recur? Subjective.
Yeah.
It was just that, okay, these people,
they're gonna fit.
They're going to be important. Of course, Chilan, or the fox spirit, recurs definitely. The demon will appear as a different form here, as a villain, of course, because I always need a villain or two, right? And then here is Phoebe with a hostile relationship to her own child, which is really not human, and so she is afraid and hostile towards this unusual child. Yeah, so she rejects the child and her husband and for a life spiritual ambition.
Yeah.
So it's sort of the whole, all the exploration around cults and masculinist drive and almost like a fascist tone, you know, to Gui is just very important to explore. I'm sort of interested in those kinds of ideas, especially with some cults or groups.
Yeah,
it seems to be very timely to look at these things.
Yeah, well, I was gonna share this at the end, but you mentioned it, and it's interesting that you use the word cult, because I thought this sentence at the end, not at page 117, just sums up almost exactly what's happening in the world right now. The fox's mother's words. All it takes is the folly of one power-crazed human to wreak havoc and cause devastation for countless others. There's always someone like that at various times in history, I thought was absolutely true.
Yeah, it's true. It's very sad, but that is true.
Yeah. So I didn't think of it as a cult thing, although it's certainly easy to think of it as a cult thing in our contemporary context. But
well, we don't have to call it a cult or anything, but we call it a kind of use of power to exploit others.
Yeah.
Both human and non-human, to exploit the earth, to exploit children.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is also there, you know, in the way that there is a use of child slavery and prostitution of chimeric creatures as well.
Yeah.
So these are all themes that are very, unfortunately, very present with us, have been present with us even before our lives. So this is something that is a very present, real thing for us.
Yeah, exactly. That we're witnessing every day.
Right.
I mentioned Phoebe and Gui. I don't know if empathy is the right word, but certainly with every other character in the novel, they are so different, and we're as a reader, and I don't know again if this is because of who I am as a reader, who I am as a person, but I felt this like beautiful empathy and this resistance to judge outward appearances, which is again who I am as a person anyway. But Sika from the Dream Zone, whose beauty is ethereal, and then at Dr. Wen, as you referenced earlier, this human scientist from the 23rd century who has a scene where she talks about her body. She's chubby when Chinese women should be willowy, I thought was beautiful. And it made me feel kind of sad in a way that we're in the 2200s. we're, 200 years away from where we are now, where we are still super judgmental of people's bodies, super judgmental of the choices they make with their bodies. And I wanted to talk to you about that. Is that our sad reality that 200 years from now, we're still going to be turning the mirror outwards instead of turning it inwards?
I don't know.
Yeah,
So far, it's been like this,
I
but there are
know.
always, there are always pockets of people who are committed to different sets of values.
Hmm.
So, we must sort of be aware that there are some of us who would be considered outside of, you know, conventional heteropatriarchal
Hmm.
definitions of what's appropriate or not appropriate. So I don't know. Are we going to
Yeah.
be like that? I think if we're still around, yeah.
Yeah.
I think if we're still
Well,
around.
one of the most optimistic things that is happening in 2219 in this novel is that, according to social conventions, children are allowed to choose their own gender, which I thought that would be an absolutely utopia world, if that happens. But you also maintain, gender doesn't disappear. Gender doesn't become something we don't signify. And in fact, you've got male characters putting their right hand on their heart to signify that they're male, and you've got Yinhe, who does this shoulder thing with her thumb and finger. And so I wanted to talk to you about that. The hope that we could have that gender completely becomes something we don't talk about, we don't question, we don't ask, we don't assume, we don't presume. People are just people, but you still have these signifiers, and I want to talk to you about that choice, and also where they came from. This was such a I don't know, almost I don't I just want to talk to you about it. I don't want to put my own thoughts and
Oh no, I made those things up because I had to think about what to use, so I just made those things up. Uh, and and usually the signifier that I meant for a non-binary person, human, would be like this,
right.
right? Male, female. But in her decides, I'm a third kind of creature. So she's not really just non-binary because she's both human and half fox, half human, half fox, you see.
Mhm.
So she's a third kind of creature. And and there are chimeric creatures, like Endecoder and his help companions, assistants, also gesturing about their gender. I
Mhm.
kind of made that up because gender is an important theme for me in my work, and I wanted to sort of bring that into this novel in a different way.
Mhm.
These days it's great that people define their own gender and talk about their own pronouns. So in the novel, people don't say their pronouns, they show their pronouns.
Mhm.
They show by physical gestures. So I thought I kind of like them, both human and non-human gesture. Um, Except number one tells Dr. Wen, please don't call me an it.
Yep.
They were very offended
Yeah.
because they began to be able to read Dr. Wen's mind. And
Hmm.
Dr. Wen was thinking, boy, number one is so trapped. It's just so terrible for them, for it to be in there. And number one eventually says,
Stop it.
interrupts and stop it. Don't call me an it. I'm not an it. I'm a they.
Yeah. That was good. The love story between I will tell you, this is like the exceptional thing you can take away from any novel, but the love story, the subtle, beautiful love story between Dr. Wang, this human scientist, and
Number
number
one.
one, this brain, and their decision to, oh, I shouldn't say that. Their decision to do what they do because of their um, blossoming benevolence, I guess, in recognizing their benevolence. It was so beautiful. But the love story, the love scene with Sika was also beautiful. It was just imagining her hands disappearing inside of Sika, and it was beautifully sensual and erotic, and I loved it. I want to talk to you about writing that love, the depth of that love, but also writing those sex scenes. Even the scene where Gui enters Phoebe was kind of
sexy
a little bit
in a
sexy.
kinky,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I get to explore all kinds of ways of being that I don't normally live, right? So I
Yeah.
have all that capacity in me. Right?
Yeah.
Capacity to imagine aggression and violence, and capacity to imagine different kinds of love, sexual love, different kinds of love that, in the case between, Yinhe and Ling, it is not a sexual love. It is not that kind of love. It is like a soulmate,
Spiritual.
spiritual love. And again, when I write it, it surprises me what happens, because I see these things. I'm a very visual person, so I'm writing and I can see the scene between Seka and Yinhe, and Yinhe reaches, her hands into Seka. So that's really surprising. So I'm often surprised when I'm writing, because I think to me, there are many, many unconscious kinds of intelligence that reside in the person. So I'm often not writing initially from a conscious place. It's from an imaginative trance state. So I see these things.
Yeah.
And then they happen. And so again, in the, the relationship between Dr. Wen and number one is, Dr. Wen is quite frustrated at first, because she doesn't know anything about number one, except that it is a brain in a vessel, until number one reveals themselves to her. So it is a slowly developing connection, but she's troubled. Of course, she's worried about her own well-being, just really worried all the time, anxious. And then the later ways, it's number one where we see number one having feelings, that we realize that number one has formed this kind of, attachment, emotional attachment to Dr. Wen. And then it becomes aware that there are other ways of being, other than having a body. So I won't spoil all, but it again, later on, when number one reappears in a different way, then I was extremely surprised as well. When Dr. Wen was finished with her work and she was going to go to her parents in bent back, and then some cheeky part of me just came out, and I thought, okay. And then later on, then I got to develop that storyline and what number one does elsewhere, and then I go back on different scenes and then include certain things so that I could weave it back from back to forth, not to front.
Right.
So the weaving sometimes occurs after discovering a scene, and then I weave it back to the front.
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, I'm surprised by these things myself.
I know. Well, now I have a question, and I think I probably know the answer, but I want to talk to you about the storytelling nights. Yinhe has these storytelling nights that are subversive and not supposed to happen. Characters from the dream zone come. It's a forbidden sort of thing, but the stories, the myths, the fables that she tells on these nights inform the story, inform the past, inform the reader. I wanted to talk to you about that as a writer. Did those also just kind of come out, or are they related to other, like, real myths, real fables, and that you connected into the novel?
Well, my brain ranges far and wide. So I'm doing research, I'm reading things, and I go, hey, look, there's this interesting philosopher,
Yeah.
I got, okay. Then I go, oh yeah, during the time of, Qin Shi Huangdi, and then I go, well, why don't I just make up this whole story about them? Not true, It's not actually true.
Right.
But I wanted to introduce the idea that the philosopher has of the yin yang school, that things have to be balanced in nature. And then if we upset that, and so that comes, that resonance that draws me to that particular philosophy comes from my own interests, in terms of being interested and being, in a sense, in some ways, a Taoist as well as a Buddhist. So then I'm interested in using that idea because it's a theme about the balance of yin and yang that is something that occurred previously in the previous novels. Yeah. So then I thought, okay, I'll make use of this guy here, and then I'll just make up the whole story that he goes to meet the young emperor, and then all that shit happens. Right. So then I make up all the stories, but then it's really the storytelling sessions or circles that that Yinhe performs as under her identity unknown wayfarer is actually coming from a place of being anarchist. It is an attempt to disrupt dominant power storytelling structures and dominant narratives in history known as fact. And so Yinhe is actually being very subversive when she tells these stories, and she undercuts the dominant storytelling all the time. And then what you also have is people in Bendback who are attending, they interrupt. Yeah. They're constantly interrupting, and she doesn't mind. It's part of the process of the storytelling, where they say, well, can you say more? What happens after this? You can't just leave us hanging like this. Right. La, la, la. So, the audience is very active in conversation with the storyteller. So it's a totally different experience of storytelling. It's not just hearing one dominant story. It's Yinhe taking a story and unpacking it, introducing all kinds of false details in it, but they are hinting at certain truths. Because if they come together, those stories actually come together toward the end in the storytelling circle, where she tells the story of Sen, who ends up becoming Gui. Right. See, so and then it becomes a real kind of explosive moment where falsity and truth in the novel collide. Right. In the novel. So what she's making up is actually no longer a making up thing. So then you have to, hopefully some of you will read it and go mind blown. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. And there's a whole idea around also the idea of the oracle bone being used throughout history from the Shang dynasty as ways of divining how to proceed. But there's a particular oracle bone that is recurring. The theme in this storytelling is from oracle bone, where there's a particular oracle bone that will not behave or function for human beings. Right. Will not refuse to obey its place, and it goes against its nature or what humans want. Powerful humans want the oracle bone to be subjected to a process, having a hole put into it and then burnt, and then the cracks, and then the diviners will read the cracks and divine what the answer to the question is. So, but there's a particular oracle bone that belongs to a mythical turtle that will not function that way because it does not belong to humans. It belongs to a divine turtle. So that's a theme that has carried forward into this novel. In other words, I'm saying that there are forces outside of humans that are much bigger than human agenda, and that we don't want to pay attention to them. If you even don't believe in mythical forces, you can look at how nature and the environment is not all well-behaved and lovely, because nature will become uncontrollable as it is due to disruptions by humans. And like Amitav Ghosh writes about it and has given talks about this, the importance of writers to engage with the environment or nature as being a force in and of itself. So this is something that was very important to me in exploring in my own way in this novel. So I came at it, in a slant, talking, referring to the great catastrophe.
Yeah.
Right.
But it also feeds into this idea, like you just said, that mythological stories come from nature and human interaction with nature, and fables come from terrible human behavior, and end up with a morality tale. But you talked about religion, and in the novel there is, reincarnation, but there's also references to Hinduism and, as you say, Taoism and Buddhism. And at one point, Stanley, Yinhe's dad, picks up a Bible, and I wanted to talk to you about that sort of, not research necessarily, not the getting that knowledge and putting it in here, but the needing the different sort of faiths and spiritual influences to be in the novel.
Oh, definitely. It's that's a conscious decision to include all these various spiritual beliefs, and then in contrast, the kind of ego-driven, more like a fascist kind of organization that's Supreme Spirit Assembly represents. And so the just to present all these different ideas. And of course Stanley is still collecting old books. In 2219 there are very few books collected by individuals, and Dakota is another one who has a great amount of books collected from all kinds of ruined buildings. Mm-hmm. So this is a recurrence of the theme of when people are in power, like Qin Shi Huangdi destroyed a lot of books. Any books that did not agree with his version of reality, he destroyed. And this is again a theme where we see, totalitarian regimes, or destroying places of learning, institutions, libraries. So the allusion to books as containing wisdom, myths, stories is very important. And of course, Yinhe's favorite human philosopher is Zhuangzi, and actually he's my favorite philosopher.
Right.
And his kind of wild wisdom that is Taoist, is sort of alluded to in the novel. So Yinhe likes that because she's a fox spirit, and she's not she's not so well behaved in a certain way, in a good way as a human, but she sort of likes that kind of energy of a being who can question authority, who can be outside of authority. For example, Zhuangzi, the story goes, one of the stories is that some officials from the court goes to him, and he's fishing at the pond, and they said the emperor would like to summon you back to court and to assist him. And Zhuangzi points to the turtle or the tortoise in the pond and says, if the emperor summons the turtle back to court, will the turtle go? And so the answer is no, because the turtle will be slaughtered for food, right? Right. So he's basically saying that he knows that, and he says, well, same thing with me. I'm just going to stay here and continue fishing. So I think that's a very attractive mindset, let's just say, to me.
Yeah, it's true. And that is my last question, which I can't believe. I'm not sure if, I think David and Tina, if you have any questions, feel free to ask Kaylee. If you are watching this video to this point on YouTube, feel free to post a question in the comment, and I will get it to Lydia and post a response on YouTube. Kaylee?
Yeah, we have actually, Tina and David had some kind of two questions that I've melded into one. They had similar themes. So often when talking to writers, folks will classify themselves as planners or pantsers, and it seems like you kind of let the story flow through you as you write. but what do you feel you need to have in your head before you start writing? How do you know when an idea has enough behind it for it to become a novel?
Mm,
I don't know until I keep going to the writing and I write enough to have a feeling for whether there's enough body in it or not. So obviously I'm not a pantser, so I write very intuitively.
right.
So I believe that's been the kind of process that works for me. I take the time to hang in there and go back to something and then keep writing scenes. And then it just becomes clearer to me after a few months.
Mm-hmm.
I need to show up to do
Right.
that. Yeah.
Right. And you're reading short stories now. Does that mean you're going to write some short stories and
I have a manuscript of short stories that I've
oh,
accumulated over many years, but mostly written in the last 5 years, but I have some from 18 years ago.
wow.
So I'm waiting to see I'm hoping to find an agent for this collection and to
Yeah,
have it submitted somewhere. Yeah,
that's great. That's exciting
thank
for
you.
a short story lover to get a collection of short stories from
I
you.
love I love short stories, so yeah.
Yeah.
In between doing the novels and the poetry, I was, slowly writing a short story there, a short story here. And
Hmm.
then, yeah, basically, I think of writing as exploration and discovery.
Hmm.
I just have to show up and I I don't operate by rules in terms of outlines
Hmm.
until later on. I mean, I tried, right? I tried to storyboard and then I looked at it and I threw it away because
Right.
it just gave me an idea or a feeling for it, and then I then go with what I
Just start
feel.
writing.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today to talk about A Dream Wants Waking. It was a real pleasure. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
you taking the time. I appreciate that you wrote this book. I
Thank
appreciate that
you.
I got to read it.
Thank
Um,
you.
if you, okay, now I have to do all of the other stuff. Our next event, if you would like to buy this book, A Dream Wants Waking, you can go to woolsackandwind.ca and buy it directly from them, or go to indiebookstores.ca and find an independent bookstore close to you. Our next event is going to be at Type Books on June 23rd with Martha Baptiste, Spencer Gordon, and Thomas Hatchard. Doors open at 6 and we start at 6:30. And then I have Farzana Doctor, who's going to talk to me on Instagram Live on July 11th. Thank you so much again, Lydia, for joining us.
Thank you to you and to
Okay.
Kaylee and to David and to Tina Marie for showing up today. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, Kaylee. Their stellar work as event coordinator is really what kind of keeps us afloat here. And that's it.
All right.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye for
Okay,
now.
thanks everybody. Take care. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye.